All right, so we're going to take a look at how to complete our delta math assignment. And so it says we're going to use synthetic to find zeros. Let me switch over here, and I've got something I want you to look at in terms of we have lots of different ways to ask the same problem. So if you look at this table, okay, it says at the top, the following these are equivalent statements about a real number b solution and a polynomial function f of x. So I can write it as a linear factor x minus b. And then if I take the opposite, I have x equals b, I can call that a 0 of the polynomial. And then if I plug that in, I'll get 0. Also, x equals b is the root of the polynomial. In other words, the solution. Root is a historical term. It's just something we've used for years and years and years. All right, but x equals b is also the x-intercept of the polynomial. In other words, where it crosses the x-axis. So this is where, in this case right here, this is where Desmos can be helpful. Okay, and then the other two, this is where we also use our synthetic division, our factoring skills. All right, so now that I know all of these things, if I switch back to the delta math assignment. All right, so it says if f of x, and I'm going to copy this down, equals x to the third plus 6x squared plus 5x minus 12, and we know that x plus 3 is a factor of f of x, then find all of the zeros of f of x algebraically. All right, so I'm going to switch back over here. Okay, so what it's asking me to do, it's telling me to find all the zeros. Well, first off, I need to know how many I need. And you look at the largest exponent. Okay, so all of my zeros are right here. So I know that there's 3 of them. So now I've got x plus 3. So I know one of my zeros to start off with is x equals negative 3. Okay, because I'm looking for 3 zeros. And I have one of them. So 1, 2, 3. So I'm looking for the other 2. So I'm going to use this to run synthetic division. So if I take the coefficients 1, 6, 5, negative 12, and I use negative 3 because I use the opposite, I'm going to bring down the 1. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. If I add that, I get 3. Negative 3 times 3 is negative 9. If I add that, I get negative 4. Negative 3 times negative 4 is positive 12, so I get 0. So this is my remainder, my number, my x, and my x squared. So if I want to just keep writing the problem out in factored form, x plus 3, then I have x squared plus 3x minus 4. Okay, so now I need to find the last 2 answers, and I'm going to be able to get that here because if you notice I have an x squared, which means this has 2 answers. Okay, I can do this 2 ways. I can I can do it 3 ways. I can factor it using the x puzzle, if possible. I can use the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula will always work, will always give me the answer. Or I can put it on Desmos and see if I can graph it. Okay, so I'm actually going to attempt to factor it. So that means negative 4 would be on top, 3 on the bottom. All right, so a multiplication problem for negative 4 would be 4 and negative 1, because that would give me negative 4. And when I add those up, I would get 3. So I'm going to factor again. So I'm going to bring down x plus 3, x plus 4, and x minus 1. Okay? All right. Once it's been completely factored, my zeros come about very easily. They're the opposites, or it's actually because I take each piece and I solve it for 0, but you don't have to do that because it's always the opposite. But let me show you what I'm talking about. If I take x plus 3 equals 0, x plus 4 equals 0, x minus 1 equals 0. And remember, I'm trying to find the zeros of the polynomial. That's why I said it equal to 0. Well, if I subtract 3, get x equals negative 3. There's my first answer. If I subtract 4, get x equals negative 4. There's my second answer. And if I add 1, there's my third answer. Okay? If you notice, that's just the opposite of what I have in parentheses. Okay? So if I switch back to Delta Math, okay, it says find all the zeros of f of x algebraically. So my first 0 was negative 3, comma, negative 4, comma, and 1. Okay, now I'm going to submit my answer. Yes, and there we go. Okay, so that's how I do this first part of my Delta Math assignment. Now there's 2 parts, so let me go back. All right, so now I'm going to look at this level 2. All right, it says if f of x equals x to the third minus 7x squared plus 24x minus 18, and f of 1 equals 0, then find all the zeros of f of x algebraically. All right, so let me copy this down. So x to the third minus 7x squared plus 24x minus 18, and we have f of 1 equals 0. Okay, so if I switch back over to my document camera, okay, so they have told me that this is a 0. So I know that one of my answers is x equals 1. So whatever was in here, because I got 0, that's that synthetic division, that's that remainder theorem. If I get a 0, then I know that that was a factor of my original problem. So I'm going to take this polynomial. I have an x to the third, so I know there's 3 answers. So I've got a 1, negative 7, 24, negative 18, and I'm going to plug in 1. So I bring down the 1. 1 times 1 is 1, so I get negative 6. 1 times negative 6 is negative 6. If I add that, I get 18. 1 times 18 is 18, and I get 0. So there's my remainder, my number, my x squared. All right, so I'm going to write it in factored form. So x minus 1, because I take the opposite of the answer they gave me, and then x squared minus 6x plus 18. Okay? All right, now I need to take my new polynomial and I need to either factor it or I have to use the quadratic formula. And so here's where I'm going to go over to Desmos. All right, and I'm going to type in that new polynomial of x squared. I don't know why it switched over to Delta Math. X squared minus 6x plus 18. All right, and let me, okay, so you can see here, there's that polynomial. All right, now look what I've got here. I've got a problem, okay? This polynomial, or this quadratic, does not cross the x-axis, okay? So if I zoom out, now that I've opened my screen back up, Okay, which means I'm not going to be able to factor this, which means it's factored completely, which means now I have to solve it. And I'm going to have to solve it using the quadratic formula. So let me go back over here. Okay, so this is my A, this is my B, this is my C. Okay, so I have one of my answers is x equals 1, and now I'm looking for the other two. All right, so x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So x equals the opposite of b, so -6, the opposite is 6, plus or minus the square root of -6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 18 all over 2 times 1. So x equals 6 plus or minus the square root so parentheses -6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 18. So -36 all over 2. So x equals 6 plus or minus. Okay, so I'm going to take the square root of -36. And remember, because I have a negative number, that's going to involve I. So the square root of 36, that's nice. It works out perfectly, is 6I divided by 2. Okay, well, 6, and 2 are all divisible by 2. So 6 divided by 2 is 3 plus or minus 3I. So those are my other two answers. So my first answer is x equals 3 plus 3I, and then 3 minus 3I. So those are my other two answers. Okay. All right. So let me go over here to Delta Math. All right. And that's a good sign. They've got that plus or minus symbol in there. So I'm going to type in my first answer. Let me bring up my other screen so you can see. Let's scoot this over. Okay, so my first answer was 1, comma, and now I'm going to type in 3 plus or minus 3 and then I. Okay, so 1, comma, 3 plus or minus 3I. And I'm going to submit. Yes. And there we go. Okay. Now, just so you know, okay, when you look at the solution in Delta Math, it may not be the exact same way that I worked it out, okay? Because there's different approaches. But just know that the quadratic formula is going to be your best bet for finding those extra solutions, okay? All right, now this may not go very smoothly the first time around. You may have to practice at it. If you've got any questions, the best thing to do would be take a picture of the problem you're working on and send it to me via Remind, so that way I can help you. Just pause for the moment. Don't hit submit. Don't give up. But also, too, I've taken off the penalty in Delta Math. So you can work on a problem. If you get it wrong, you get it wrong. You can try a new problem and just keep working on it until you get 10 problems right. Okay? Good luck, you guys.